All right. Well, welcome everybody to another installment of the Verified Carrier podcast here, where we're going to talk to another industry expert as we look at the supply chain and all the different parts to see what's happening and, what we can glean, what advice we can receive about what's happening with, you know, fraud at large. So today you have me, yours truly, Andre, President of Strategic Relations at Verified, and then I have Chuck on here with me. And Chuck, if you want to just let everybody know, who you are, where you come from, I think that'd be great to kick off.
Okay. I work for the Healthcare Distribution Alliance. It's an industry advocate. The headquarters are based in Washington, D.C. Our principal constituency are the pharmaceutical distributors. The pharmaceutical supply chain is somewhat different than most. You've got manufacturers, and you've got the distributors, and you've got your retailers. Customers, patients, you and I don't buy drugs directly from a manufacturer. It goes through a fairly detailed supply chain before you get access to it, typically from a pharmacy or a hospital. Within the HDA is a security contingent, a supply chain security contingent, and that's what's known as the PCSC, the Pharmaceutical Cargo Security Coalition. That coalition has existed since 2016. I started it when I worked for a pharmaceutical manufacturer, and I kind of did it part-time. The joke is that I was doing it from my kitchen table at night after work, sharing intelligence and talking about topics at the time. The pharmaceutical industry back then was a prime target of cargo thieves and supply chain disruptors. It has since changed significantly. We don't have anywhere near the issues that we had way back then. But it's because of the rallying of a bunch of people within the industry, and I can get into that later on in time. The PCSC has approximately 1,200 individual members. Most of what we do is act as a pointer index or a linking index between members and vendors like Verified Carrier, like GPS vendors like Overhaul, trucking firms, insurance carriers, things like that. We publish a daily supply chain intelligence bulletin, if you will. Nobody else in any other industry does that here in the United States. We also act as a liaison between the government, the regulatory agencies within the pharmaceutical space, and U.S. Customs, and that's with all industries. Membership of the PCSC is not exclusive to pharmaceutical companies. Google's a member, Amazon is a member, Tiffany's is a member. A number of companies outside of the pharma space like what it is that we're doing. They like the intelligence exchange. So they are also members of the organization.
Yeah, and I guess, speaking of different members joining and just pharma in general, I feel like you guys are ahead of what everybody else is doing. And there's a lot of really great industry practices that I think I know the challenge is maybe the cost component for, smaller companies or outfits or people sharing or selling, moving lower cost commodities. But at the same time, I think, the need for implementing more stringent controls is higher than ever.
For, for our
What do
industry,
you,
for our industry, it is. What we principally distribute are consumable products. So the scrutiny, the regulatory scrutiny on us, and this isn't a knock on other industries, but as opposed to somebody that moves hard goods. Somebody from Lowe's or Home Depot or, somebody that moves electronics or cell phones or things like that. If those types of products are stolen and they get in the wrong hands, you can't be physically hurt by that. But in the pharma space, if somebody steals a temperature-sensitive shipment, the example I typically use is like insulin. Insulin is required to be temperature controlled. Bad guys or the perpetrators of cargo theft don't have quality control and quality assurance people within their organizations. Once they steal a shipment, It's unknown how long they'll hold it before they try to reintroduce it into a supply chain. If they don't keep that product environmentally the way it was supposed to be maintained, it could become one of two things. It could become toxic, or it could just flat out not work. And in both those instances, somebody could get hurt. I mean, somebody doesn't get the reaction that they're supposed to get when they take that particular medicine or that particular product. So we as an industry are a lot more particular when it comes to choosing vendors that we're going to work with. Back in 2006, 2007, I mean, we were, from a full-size tractor-trailer shipment loss ratio, I mean, we were losing as many as 4 tractor-trailers a month. This year, just in the United States, I don't think we've lost 5 total. Most of what happens with us involves either pilferage or something in the last mile space as opposed to the larger tractor-trailer space. But one of the reasons it looks like, and it's true, I mean, that we're a little bit more, little bit less of a target is because of the measures that we take, because it is that we're selling consumable products. If we lose something, the regulatory ramifications for that can be immense. I mean, you could lose your right to manufacture, you could lose your right to distribute. I mean, there's a number of different things that could happen to it.
Well, I guess, is there anything that you think that the industry, I mean, you hear the term low-hanging fruit. Is there something that companies could start doing, even if they're not moving pharma per se, to elevate their risk prevention, mitigate their risk, or, because you don't have that regulatory pressure. So it's not like you have to do it, but now everybody's getting hammered, whether it's a shipper saying, or a manufacturer, or your insurance company. Everybody's like, hey, we can't, either your rates are going to shoot up, or like what kind of things can companies do to secure their freight, which is, cargo theft is at an all-time high.
Right. The biggest thing is, and Verify is a part of this, but the biggest thing is knowing who it is you're doing business with and having a comfort level with that particular entity. That to me is, and we preach this every time I go out and speak at seminars and conferences and things like that, is developing relationships with the people that are handling your products, where they know you, you know them. There are specific rules that the vendors know, guardrails as to what they can and cannot do. They cannot double broker a shipment out to someone else. They can't, show up late. They can't, operate equipment that isn't safe or secure. They must have, GPS tracking on trucks and trailers. They must provide for you 28 hours, 48 hours prior to arrival, photographs of the drivers, descriptions of the trucks. Bad guys are even, infiltrating that type of thing. But the biggest thing is having that level of comfort with whoever it is that touches your stuff. That to me, that's what we've hammered into the pharmaceutical industry. Most of the major pharmaceutical manufacturers are using trucking firms that they've used for years. They stay away from, traditionally they stay away from things like load boards and stuff like that, even though load boards today are far more protected than they've ever been. They have business relationships that they've maintained for a long, long time. And they, in certain instances, for certain types of products, just to give you an example, some of the large-scale pharma companies approached trucking firms that haul munitions for the government, DoD-qualified trucking firms, because they know that those trucking firms have been vetted, soup to nuts. The drivers have secret security clearances. The trucks have GPS all over them. They run driver teams all the time. That's a safe bet. I mean, and they develop relationships with them, and they've used those relationships for a long time.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great way if they've experienced some sort of enhanced vetting somewhere else, that you can use that as well. So far as tech goes, Chuck, because listening to you at a conference and hearing just about people pretending they're from the government and calling in for an audit, and then they call in from the company and, hey, we overshipped something, and it's just so wild to hear the things that they're doing. I guess it's great to hear how there's been a reduction, on the pharma side. Is there anything new? And again, I always like to, I forgot who started the message, but like, don't educate the scammers. But is there any evolution that you're seeing with what's happening? Is there any other kind of things to look out for? One that I recently had, on a call with law enforcement is just like the phishing and getting emails and impersonating. So this is a big thing. So, I want to caution people, like, don't click on links that, or if something looks off, call somebody. But what are you seeing within the pharma space that maybe 3-4 years ago wasn't happening?
Well, one of the things, you hit the nail right on the head. One of the things that we as shippers have been forced to educate ourselves on is cybersecurity, and looking at email addresses and looking at what phishing attempts might be and things like that. Prior to 3-4 years ago, I mean, you get, as an employee of a company, you would get the training related to IT security and cybersecurity. And I can remember the logistics guys and even some of the guys that were in supply chain security going, I don't need to really pay attention to that. And it turns out that that's now a place of vulnerability if people don't pay attention to that. So it's expanded. When you look at those seminars and those conferences, and you've been a part of this yourself, we have to educate those in logistics and in supply chain security. It's not just a guy with a stocking cap on his head and a crowbar over his shoulder going, I think I'm going to take that. It's much, much more sophisticated now. And one of the open doors is through cyber. And the more complex supply chains become, or the more, conversely, the technology that's used to speed up the way goods are actually moved actually opens up windows of vulnerability, particularly in the cyberspace. So we as security professionals and the logistics people that are moving the goods now have to pay attention to that. We have to pay attention to those cyber vulnerabilities. That's where bad guys are getting in. You've met Pete Mento before. Pete and I are very close friends. And one of the opening salvos he has in his presentations are, when you talk about a bad guy, whether the bad guy is getting into your systems or not, he's not knocking at the door. He's already in the house. He's already inside. And you've got to figure out how he got inside and how to protect your most valuable, critical information when it comes to shipping and your goods and things like that.
Yeah, and I always like to point out, when showing examples of things that we've seen from our vetting team, fraudulent documentation, whether it's cab cards, fake license, all of it looks good. And I always like to ask, like, who's using ChatGPT or anything else within their job? Some people are, sheepishly raising their hands, but it's a tool, and it's a great tool. Just like, just going from a calculator and paper to now using Excel, it increases your productivity. You have to use it right. But I'm like, anything that you do and images that it can create and all this stuff, and people, have trouble, oftentimes trying to, send funny information or a funny picture that they edited. And some people can't tell the difference. I think that's where we're getting to a point where a lot of people believe certain things are real that aren't real. They're AI generated. I always like to say, anything that you're using and you're just like, I think it might be fake, whatever. Like, the scammers have all that same technology at their disposal, and they have no shame about trying to do it. And, as I think it was somebody at Werner that pointed out, like, we have to be right 100% of the time. The scammer only has to be right once. So if they try it on 1,000 people and one person falls for it, that's it. Now they're in the door. They're already in the house. And so yeah, you really have to kind of step up and rethink how you do things. I know banking was a place where we used to go into a bank. There used to be a teller. They would see you, they see if somebody's fidgeting or something seems off. But as we moved, I think I'll stop by when it comes to paying bills or deposits or anything. I'll see a teller for 1 out of 50 transactions, right? Uh, the rest of it is all through your phone. It's all through your laptop. So there's different mechanisms of how to catch things, but it's always constantly changing. And banking stepped up their game for all their fraud and prevention and algorithm tracking and multi-factor authentication. I feel like logistics we're just getting into it.
I think you're
But
exactly right. I mean, that technology can be used in two different directions. It can be used for the good or it can be used for the bad. But I've always said this, in that as good as those fakes or frauds can be, much like it was when you walked into that bank and a teller sized you up and you sized the teller up, there are still crumbs of information. There are still crumbs of things that are left, that if you're real sharp at what you're looking for, you can pick up. You just need to be taught how to do it. You need to be exposed to what actually happened. One of the things the PCSC does is, and you've seen it in seminars and conferences that we do, we will take something bad that happened and we'll put it up on the screen. We will remove the name of whoever the victim was, and we'll talk about from the beginning to the end how it happened, how the shipper was faked out, how they were frauded out, or how the driver was able to slip through and make the pickup. And we do that for a reason. We want to be able to expose to as many people as possible that particular MO or method of operation. There are so many MOs out there now, there's no way you're going to get them all. But the more that you can educate people of the types of methods that these individuals are doing, the better they're prepared to be able to defend themselves. It doesn't always work, but it's better than not having any intelligence information at all and kind of shooting from the hip.
yeah, and like I said, joining the conference that the team put together in New Jersey, is eye-opening to see just the level of sophistication that they've gone through. And again, like you said, there's different regulatory hurdles. There's different steps that are introduced within pharma that, again, creates a different fissure to exploit just because something seems so routine. And when somebody's versed in the right language, it's easier to pull it off. But it applies to every shipping situation. If somebody's saying the right words or somebody shows up, even if some truck shows up 30 minutes earlier, but it sounds like they're for a routine pickup, right? Like, people don't question it. And if it's a Friday afternoon, let's get this guy on. Of course, we had only, one shipment left on the dock. Let's knock this out. And so, I think it's Scott that points out, Scott Cornell, oftentimes the person on the front line is the one that's trained the least.
Right.
And that's
Right.
the scary part. And there's a lot of cool ideas and products that are coming out of how do we bridge this gap to empower people to be able to, load the right equipment or control the right information in a timely way. So, we're still seeing all that develop. So for me, it's great to see other people, whether it's competition or, somebody in a complementary space, but just working towards rooting this out. I like Dale Praxis.
Those contracts, those best practices, when the lawyers are in the room between a shipper and a carrier, and they're, signing them on both things, those don't mean anything unless that works its way all the way down to the guy on the dock. If he doesn't know what was signed in those agreements, the agreements are worthless. I mean, they don't mean anything at all. They really don't. That's the tough part, is getting the information flowed all the way down to the lowest level. And that's not a knock against those people, but the lowest level of application in the supply chain. Those people need to know just as much as the people that were in that boardroom when that contract was signed.
Yeah. And it's so funny, though. They have that expression, buying a bill of goods. This is the industry where some people are literally just buying a bill of goods because they're not getting, because if the person at that point in transaction did not load the right truck, didn't check, whether it's the VIN or the driver, there's a number of steps that happen, or just even the right carrier wasn't even selected to begin with because that was a scam company or double broker. Then yeah, all it trickles down that the right truck's not going to get loaded. It's not going to reach the right consignee. Um, so it's just wild. But as far as what's happening, I'm seeing a lot of improvements. I'm seeing, with administration, um, it's almost like breakneck how fast things are checking or not checking, but they're changing things or enforcing rules. So, again, you can be for it or against it, but it's just the regulatory environment is definitely changing here. So what do you think this kind of will translate to in the next few years? Is it going to help reduce the fraud? Are the steps the FMCSA is taking, is that going to make it harder for new entrants to be able to pull it off, or for people to, get an MC shut down and just go create another company and start from scratch as if nothing happened? What are your thoughts there?
No, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. This is the first time. I've been in this a lot longer than you. Scott and I and Keith,
Just a little bit, just a little
just
bit longer, Chuck.
a little bit. We've been around for a while, and we've been ringing this bell for years. We've been trying to get uh, Congress and legislators and people from the FMCSA and the DOT for years and years to pay attention to this. And it took significant losses within the retail sector, not necessarily the cargo sector, but in the retail sector, to finally break that wall open. And it was retailers that started to complain and say, "Look, we're losing through store thefts and warehouse thefts and things like that. we're losing we're losing goods, and we don't have the teeth to be able to punish the people that do that." We saw an opening in that. The people from TAPA, Scott, myself, Keith, a bunch of people, we were able to glob on to that train, if you will, and added cargo theft to the retail theft aspect of that type of legislation. So now people are listening to us. The DOT sent out that survey a month and a half ago. They wanted to hear more about what the industry was experiencing when it came to cargo theft, and asking, what can we from the DOT do to help you? The Corca bill, Grassley's bill, talking about creating a central repository for supply chain cargo theft data and assigning cargo theft investigations to federal agencies like like Homeland Security or the FBI or things like that. We've wanted this for years, and it's just now dawning. I mean, it's just now getting the attention that it needs to get. So that's obviously going to make things better. But like anything else, the bad guys they'll modify their behavior. They'll try to change to be able to. They've got nothing to lose. There's no overhead on their part. I mean, where there is on ours, there isn't any on theirs. But I think we're entering a very sensitive time where we need to keep the pressure on legislators. We need to keep pressure on the vendors that develop the type of technology that helps us better defend ourselves. And I can see it. I can see a turning point. This isn't a problem that's ever going to go away. But being able to defend yourself better than we have in the past, as recently as a year or two ago, I think is going to make a big difference in this space. I really do.
Yeah, well, that's good. I think that's a that's a nice hopeful note to end on.
Yeah.
And then I guess just before we close out, Chuck, just want to see if there's any initiatives that you're working on, any events that you think are a must attend, whether somebody is a carrier or a broker or a manufacturer or shipper, of where they're going to get to hear this. Kind of hear about the best practices. I threw out your event. That happens. We got TAPA coming up. Is there any other space or local, regional events that you think are noteworthy for people to attend?
Well, there's the regional security councils, which there's at least 3 active ones now, and it doesn't really cost anything to belong to them, or if it does, it's a very small amount of money. You've got TAPA, you've got PCSC, you've got the National Supply Chain Protection Association. One of the things that I'll do probably within the next couple of weeks is I'll script out all of the conferences relative to supply chain and supply chain security that will be coming up in 2026. And I make that list public to all PCSC members. Last year, I think in January, I had as many as 14 or 15 already scheduled conferences or seminars on the topic. So I can make that available to you once that's done. I mean, you can disseminate that amongst your constituency if you like.
Yeah, would be happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things where you can't defend against what you don't know. Intelligence is a very important piece of this. Going to those types of things, I would say, in my mind, TAPA has the greatest influence because that's all they concentrate on. And TAPA also has the standards that nobody else really has. And if you're interested and willing to go through the vetting process to become certified under a standard, that makes you that much stronger.
Yeah. And us as an organization, Verified Carrier, we're happy to help out anywhere we can.
Yeah.
But those are organizations that we support because I think it is really nice, in absence of having the government always fill that role, to have associations that could come together and have a lot of just industry champions and people with all this experience to be able to bring that together and then be able to disseminate it at an industry level to just help elevate the entire industry. I think it's been pretty massive. But yeah, Chuck, just want to say thank you for jumping on, letting us hear about what you're working on, the difference between the pharma space and just the regular shipping. And then I think there's a ton of overlap of things that people can glean and how to implement this within their organization. So I want to say thanks for that.
Yeah.
And any closing thoughts before?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, Chuck, thank you again. And tune in for the next one. Again, as we continue analyzing the supply chain from different vantage points and get to hear from great industry experts like Chuck Forsaith.
Thanks very much.
Thank you all.